Stoic philosophy offers several practical strategies for avoiding anger and resentment, which are considered to be destructive emotions that can potentially lead to irrational and unproductive behavior. Here are 7 key Stoic solutions for avoiding anger and resentment. Number 1. Cultivate self-awareness. Self-awareness is the ability to observe and understand one's own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. In Stoic philosophy, self-awareness is considered to be the key to avoiding negative emotions such as anger and resentment. By cultivating self-awareness, we can recognize the thoughts, beliefs, and triggers that lead us to experience these emotions. For example, if we know that a particular situation or person tends to make us angry or resentful, we can prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally to avoid reacting in a negative way. Self-awareness also enables us to recognize when we are starting to feel angry or resentful, and to take steps to prevent these emotions from escalating. For example, if we notice that we are starting to feel angry, we can take a few deep breaths, step back from the situation, and try to adopt a more objective perspective. Another way that self-awareness can help us avoid anger and resentment is by helping us to recognize when our expectations are unrealistic or unreasonable. Often, we become angry or resentful when we feel that someone or something has not met our expectations. By being more mindful of our expectations, we can avoid setting ourselves up for disappointment and anger. Ultimately, cultivating self-awareness is about developing a deeper understanding of ourselves and our emotional responses. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and reactions, we can gain greater control over our emotions and prevent them from controlling us. This can help us to live a happier and more fulfilling life, free from the negative effects of anger and resentment. Number 2. Practice rational thinking. Stoic philosophy teaches that emotions are not caused by external events, but rather by our thoughts and beliefs about those events. In other words, it is not the event itself that causes us to feel a certain way, but rather our interpretation of the event. This is the foundation of the Stoic belief that practicing rational thinking can help us to avoid negative emotions like anger and resentment. When we encounter a potentially triggering event, the Stoics suggest that we should approach it with a rational and objective mindset. One way to do this is to ask ourselves a series of questions to help us evaluate the situation more objectively. For example, we might ask 1. Is this situation really as bad as it seems, or am I blowing it out of proportion? 2. Is this situation something that I can control, or is it beyond my control? 3. What evidence do I have to support my beliefs about this situation, and is there any evidence to the contrary? 4. What is the worst that could happen, and how likely is it to actually happen? 5. Will reacting emotionally in this situation really help me or make things worse in the long run? By taking a step back and looking at the situation objectively, we can often gain a better perspective on the situation and avoid getting swept up in our emotions. This can help us to make more rational and effective choices, rather than reacting impulsively. Another way to practice rational thinking is to focus on the things that are within our control. Often, we become upset or frustrated by events that are outside of our control. By accepting that there are certain things that we simply cannot change and focusing our attention on the things that we can control, we can avoid becoming overly attached to specific outcomes and avoid negative emotions like anger and resentment. Overall, practicing rational thinking is about remaining calm and objective in the face of challenges, and not allowing ourselves to be overcome by our emotions. By adopting a rational and objective perspective, we can reduce the impact of external events on our emotions, and better control our responses to them. Number 3. Practice empathy. Stoic philosophy emphasizes the importance of practicing empathy and understanding towards others, even in difficult situations. This is because the Stoics believe that negative emotions like anger and resentment often arise from our reactions to other people's actions or behaviors. When someone behaves in a way that upsets or annoys us, it is natural to feel angry or resentful. However, the Stoics suggest that by taking a step back and trying to understand the other person's perspective, we can avoid becoming consumed by negative emotions. Practicing empathy involves trying to put ourselves in the other person's shoes and seeing things from their perspective. Perhaps the person is acting out of fear, insecurity, or misunderstanding. By recognizing that other people may have their own set of challenges and insecurities, we can begin to see their actions in a more compassionate light. In addition to understanding the other person's perspective, practicing empathy also involves recognizing the common humanity that we share with others. This means seeing other people as fellow human beings, rather than as objects or obstacles to our own desires and goals. By practicing empathy and understanding towards others, we can avoid taking their actions personally and becoming angry or resentful. Instead, we can approach the situation with a more level-headed, objective mindset. This can lead to more constructive conversations and problem-solving, rather than escalating tensions and negative emotions. It's important to note that practicing empathy does not mean condoning or excusing harmful behavior. It simply means recognizing that other people may have their own set of challenges and motivations, and trying to understand their perspective before reacting emotionally. Overall, practicing empathy is an essential component of Stoic philosophy, helping us to cultivate a greater sense of understanding, compassion, and connection with those around us. Number 4, exercise self-control. Self-control is a key aspect of Stoic philosophy and is essential for avoiding negative emotions such as anger, fear, and anxiety. It involves using our rational mind to control our emotions and actions, rather than allowing our emotions to control us. The Stoics believe that negative emotions arise when we become attached to things that are outside of our control. For example, if we become angry because someone cut us off in traffic, we are essentially reacting to a situation that is beyond our control. This is where self-control comes into play. Self-control involves taking a step back from our immediate emotions and considering the situation in a more objective way. By doing so, we can better understand what is within our control and what is not. For example, we cannot control the behavior of other drivers on the road, but we can control our own reactions to their actions. The Stoics believed that self-control was a skill that could be developed through practice and discipline. By training ourselves to think and act in a rational and objective manner, we can gradually gain more control over our emotions and develop greater self-mastery. One way to exercise self-control is through the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness involves paying attention to our thoughts and emotions without judgment, and observing them from a more detached perspective. By practicing mindfulness regularly, we can develop greater awareness of our emotional responses and learn to manage them more effectively. Another way to develop self-control is through the practice of delayed gratification. This involves resisting the temptation to indulge in immediate pleasures or impulses, and instead focusing on longer-term goals and values. For example, if we are trying to save money, we may need to resist the impulse to buy something we don't need, even if it would provide immediate pleasure. Ultimately, exercising self-control is about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to external events and internal emotions. By disciplining ourselves to think and act in a rational and objective manner, we can prevent ourselves from getting carried away by our emotions and cultivate a greater sense of inner peace and self-mastery. Number 5, practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is a key component of Stoic philosophy and is essential for achieving inner peace and emotional well-being. The Stoics believe that by forgiving others and letting go of past hurt, we could avoid negative emotions such as anger and resentment, and cultivate a greater sense of inner harmony. The Stoics believed that the root cause of anger and resentment was often a lack of understanding or empathy towards others. When we feel wronged by someone, it is natural to want to seek revenge or retaliate. However, this only perpetuates a cycle of negative emotions and can lead to further conflict. Instead, the Stoics recommended practicing forgiveness as a means of breaking this cycle. Forgiveness involves letting go of past hurt and granting others the grace to make mistakes and learn from them. By doing so, we can free ourselves from negative thoughts and emotions and move on from the past. Forgiveness does not mean condoning or excusing harmful behavior. Rather, it involves recognizing that all human beings are fallible and capable of making mistakes. It involves putting ourselves in the other person's shoes and seeking to understand their perspective, even if we do not agree with their actions. Forgiveness also requires a certain degree of humility and self-awareness. It involves recognizing that we too have made mistakes in the past, and that others may forgive us for our own shortcomings and failures. Practicing forgiveness is not always easy, and may require considerable effort and discipline. It may involve confronting and processing difficult emotions, as well as learning to communicate effectively with others. However, the Stoics believe that forgiveness is an essential part of developing a virtuous character and living a fulfilling life. By practicing forgiveness, we can avoid getting stuck in negative emotions and achieve a greater sense of inner peace and well-being. Ultimately, forgiveness is a key component of Stoic philosophy, teaching us to let go of the past and focus on what is within our control in the present moment. Number 6. Focus on what is within your control. The Stoics believe that one of the keys to a fulfilling life is to recognize and focus on what is within our control. They believe that there are certain things that are outside of our power, such as natural disasters, the behavior of other people, and even our own physical aging and mortality. However, there are also things that are within our control, such as our actions, beliefs, thoughts, and attitudes. By recognizing what is within our control, the Stoics believe that we could avoid becoming overly attached or invested in external events that are outside of our influence. This in turn can help us to avoid negative emotions, such as fear, anxiety, and grief. Focusing on what is within our control also involves taking responsibility for our own thoughts and actions. Rather than blaming external circumstances for our problems or difficulties, we can take charge of our own lives and work towards improving our situation. For example, if we are unhappy in our job, rather than blaming our boss or colleagues, we can instead focus on improving our own skills and seeking out new opportunities. By doing so, we can create a sense of agency and empowerment in our own lives. However, focusing on what is within our control does not mean that we should ignore or disregard external events altogether. The Stoics acknowledge that external events can have an impact on our lives, and that we may need to respond to certain situations in order to protect ourselves or others. Instead, the Stoics believe that we should approach external events with a sense of detachment and objectivity. By focusing on what is within our control, we can develop a greater sense of inner peace and acceptance, even in the face of difficult or challenging circumstances. Ultimately, focusing on what is within our control is about recognizing that we have a choice in how we respond to the world around us. By taking ownership of our own thoughts and actions, we can cultivate a greater sense of inner strength and resilience, and live a more fulfilling and virtuous life. Number 7. Recognize the impermanence of all things. The Stoics believe that everything in life is impermanent and constantly in a state of flux. This includes not just material objects, but also people, relationships, and even our own thoughts and emotions. By recognizing the impermanence of all things, the Stoics believe that we could avoid becoming overly attached to people or things that may change or disappear. They acknowledge that the desire for material possessions or the attachment to a particular person or relationship can lead to excessive emotional investment, causing unnecessary suffering when these things eventually pass away or change. The Stoics believe that by accepting the transitory nature of life, we can develop a greater sense of inner peace and contentment. Rather than clinging to external objects or relationships as a source of happiness, we can find joy and fulfillment from within ourselves. Furthermore, recognizing the impermanence of all things can also help us to approach difficult or stressful situations with greater equanimity and acceptance. By acknowledging that all things must eventually pass, we can avoid becoming overly attached to a particular outcome or clinging to a sense of certainty. However, recognizing the impermanence of all things does not mean that we should become indifferent or apathetic towards the things that matter to us. The Stoics recognize that while everything is impermanent, this did not diminish the value or importance of the present moment. Instead, the Stoics believe that by recognizing the transitory nature of life, we can approach each moment with a greater sense of gratitude and appreciation. We can cherish each opportunity and relationship for what it provides in the present moment, while also being mindful of the impermanence and change that is inherent in life. In summary, recognizing the impermanence of all things is an important aspect of Stoic philosophy. It is about accepting that everything in life is constantly in flux and understanding that attachment to external objects or relationships can lead to unnecessary suffering. By embracing the transitory nature of life, we can develop a greater sense of inner peace, equanimity, and gratitude. In conclusion, the ancient philosophy of Stoicism offers valuable practical strategies for avoiding anger and resentment. By recognizing that our emotions are within our control, reframing our perspectives, and focusing on what is within our power, we can develop a greater sense of resilience and inner peace. The 7 strategies outlined in this video offer actionable steps that you can take to cultivate a more Stoic approach to life. By practicing these strategies, you can learn to respond to difficult situations with greater equanimity, avoid becoming overly invested in external outcomes, and find a sense of contentment and fulfillment from within. We hope that this content has been valuable in introducing you to the wisdom of the Stoics and providing actionable steps for living a more fulfilling and virtuous life. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more ancient Stoic wisdom and practical strategies for living a fulfilling life.